Welcome friends to yet another lesson in the series of Genesis. Today we are going to learn lesson 5 called God the Promise Keeper. In this lesson we are going to talk about the time when God made a promise to Abraham and how he fulfilled that promise. Dear God, through this lesson help us believe in your promises even though sometimes it may be long before those promises are fulfilled. I ask this prayer in Jesus' precious name. Amen. God promised Abraham descendants. Abraham and his wife Sarai were both old and had no children yet. Still, God promised that their children were to become a great nation. According to Genesis chapter 15, verses 5 and 6, God took Abraham outside and said, "Now look towards the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." Then he believed in the Lord, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. According to Genesis chapter 21, verses 1 to 3, the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Abraham was 75 years old when God promised him a son, according to Genesis chapter 12, and he was 100 years old when he had Isaac. He had to wait for 25 years to see God's promise being fulfilled. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham. He said, "Take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering, and one on the mountains of which I will tell you." According to Genesis chapter 22 verse 3, Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac, his son. And he split wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place which God had told him. As they approached the mountain, the 2 servants and donkey were left behind. Isaac asked, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." So the 2 of them walked on together. Then they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood and bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, and do nothing to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. Abraham called the name of that place, "The Lord will provide," as it is said to this day, "In the mount of the Lord it will be provided." The obedience of Abraham is what the Lord wanted from him, not the sacrifice of Isaac. Abraham passed the test. Abraham didn't hesitate, and he didn't question God's promises. Abraham was fully convinced in what God was able to do. It doesn't matter what God has promised. It will come to pass.